So the Wall Street Journal is reporting this morning that the Biden administration is negotiating to loosen some of the strict controls over Venezuela, that this would allow Chevron to continue to pump oil, to start pumping oil there again if the sanctions are eased. Is this a situation where Maduro doesn't look so bad when we can't get OPEC Plus to go along with our needs?
I think that there's, I just saw the article as I was coming in this morning. There's a lot left to be desired by that article. I think that we're still looking at what the Maduro regime needs to be able to do in order for us to take steps on our end. We have already taken some steps that we think make sense to strengthen the U.S. position economically, as well as our objectives for transformation and change in Venezuela. It's in relationship between the regime and the opposition, and we're going to continue to work on that. There's really nothing to announce yet. I think that's very premature to any discussions that we're having.
So what's wrong in the article? It says that you are preparing to loosen sanctions. Is that or is that not the case?
I think we're not there yet, and I think we'll continue to. I'm sure I'll have something to update you if something changes, but frankly, there's nothing for me to report to you at this point.
Amos, let's talk a little bit about what happened with the OPEC Plus production cuts yesterday. 2 million barrels per day is the headline, but if you look at the math, it's really closer to 900,000 because some of the countries in OPEC Plus were not meeting their quotas already. You're talking about 900 million barrels per day of additional cuts. That's just about what we've been releasing from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve over this period of time. I know our plan for now is to continue releasing, but the SPR is already at the lowest levels we've seen since 1984 because of the releases to date. So how much is left there? What can you continue to do? And was this the Saudis sending a message saying everything you release from the SPR, we will cut here?
Well, first, I've learned over many years to take what OPEC says and what OPEC does as two completely separate streams. They were already over 3 million barrels below their quotas that they set for themselves, and so I will, we'll wait to see if it's even 900,000. I suspect that it's significantly below that, if any cut at all. I'll be very surprised to see if there are net cuts. Maybe a couple of countries will cut while others will increase. And so we'll see what that means. As far as the SPR, look, we said we would release about 180 million barrels over a period of roughly 6 months. We're already past the 6 months, but we haven't released the full 180 million. As we said yesterday, the president has authorized another release of about 10 million barrels in November. That still gives us more room before we reach the 180 million. So we still have some space to do that, and we will see what the impacts that these things will have on price. We don't believe that it's going to have a much more significant impact on price to the upside, the actions by OPEC. So I think we'll be in a good place to continue to supply the American economy, and I think we still have room there. There's no doubt that you're right. We are not looking to. We want to make sure we have an SPR. We want to make sure we have a robust SPR. I think we still do. And we have plenty of room still to continue going.
What's the biggest concern if you don't think that what OPEC Plus did yesterday, just in terms of this announcement, what they say they're going to do, if you don't think it's going to lead to higher energy prices, why do we fight so hard to try and get them not to do it?
Well, look, I think prices did go up a few dollars over the last several days. I know today they're running relatively flat, but over the last few days, they've gone up. But I think that the mistake that they made is that they are cutting production, or now at least they're rhetorically trying to cut production at a time when prices were relatively high. We were already reduced the price from 120 down to about $80 or $85. So a massive reduction in price, that what the president set out to do when we put the strategy together several months ago. So we have brought the prices down, but not to a point where it justified a reduction in cut announcement by OPEC. And frankly, a lot of countries around the world, specifically low-income countries, are seeing that Saudi Arabia and Russia are colluding against them. And that's really unfortunate. And that's what the mistake is. The world is still at a volatile place. We don't know where it's going to go. and we would like to see prices continue to go down. We've always said we were going to replenish the SPR when prices got to be low. We've never said what that would be. This just was not necessary to do at this time. And we're going to work to see what we can do to make sure that a small number of countries can continue to have an impact that threatens the global economy.